So hi, welcome, and thanks for joining me today. I'm here with Ros Meredith, who is the Learning and Events Officer at Maidstone Museum, and Pete Joyce, who is a SEND parent like myself, and together they worked in a collaboration to develop the sensory backpacks, or as they like to call them, the fidget backpacks, which they loan to families from the museum. They're advertised on the museum's website with images and the list of the contents plus links to other resources like visual stories. So I'd recommend that you look at Maidstone Museum's website for good examples of that. So without further ado, Ros, if I can start with you, could you possibly, thank you, could you possibly give us an overview of the fidget bags? What's in them? Why do you chose those objects as well? And also a little bit the practical side about how the actual loan system works and how much they cost to set up as well, please.
Of course, yeah. So this is a fidget backpack. It contains a lot of very practical, fun objects, including, and I shall hold some up, we have a squidgy frog. We have one of these balls that, you know, the stretchy elastic balls. We have a tangle twister, I think it's called. Importantly, we have a magnifying glass, a sand timer. This is a 10-minute sand timer. Another sort of waterfall type timer, which is always very fun to play with. Let's get this one, a puppet. And also one of the key things are some, throw it on the floor, some ear defenders. Because there are sounds and noises around our museum that can be quite loud at times. We also have a picture exchange board, which comes with a little bag of pictures that match with our floor plan to plan your visit around the museum. So they come with these little cards that can be stuck onto, let me stick some on, with Velcro onto our little board, so the journey around the museum can be planned in advance. There's also a contents list and a sort of an overview of what the backpack's about. People can borrow them from our front desk. They don't cost anything to borrow. We've kept them completely free, but we do ask for some form of ID that's securely locked away while it's being borrowed. So they're borrowed from the front desk, and then the people who borrow them are directed, the families are directed to a quiet zone to be able to unpack the bag and see what's in there, so they can plan their route around the museum using the board, because there are a lot of galleries in Maidstone Museum. There's 14 galleries, which is a lot to take in one go. So the idea of this board, which is part of a discussion with Pete, means that families can plan their route around and it not be too overwhelming for those who would find it overwhelming. The idea is everything's a bit of fun. It's there so that children can use them to maybe time how long they're in a gallery for, or to look closely at an object. They don't necessarily connect directly to objects in our museum. The idea is that they're there so that parents can look and the children have got something to do, or so that the children are sort of maybe fidgeting with something, but it's also helping them focus on what they're looking at. They have been very popular when we were open to the public. That's the challenge at the moment, because we're closed. Obviously, they're not being used, but when we're open, they are in demand a lot, not just by families, but by school groups as well. They have been used by teachers for children in their school groups to use. Yeah.
That's great, thank you. So how much do you reckon each bag cost to set it up approximately?
They are probably cost, oh, I don't know, I think they're about £70 each to set up. What we managed to do, the resources are sourced from suppliers that we as a museum use a lot. So a lot of from KCS, Kent County Supplies, and then a couple of other Amazon we picked up the little boards from. But things such as the balls and the frogs and the magnifying glasses come in multi-packs. So they sort of work out quite cost effective, because we actually use these magnifying glasses in other workshops we do for schools and families. So I just bought a job lot that I needed for something else and used them across with this. Things like the little pencil case were, I think they were like £1 each from Tiger. I'm a sucker for a bargain. So if I find something that's useful for this sort of thing, I do like to go and find a bargain. But they have been really worth their weight in gold, as they say. They have been very popular so far.
That's brilliant. And you have a few, don't you? You have a range, so if a family's come in and they bought they borrowed the lion one, they can come back in another time and borrow a different one.
Absolutely. Right? I've actually got a second one here which hasn't gone out yet. This is one I've been doing over the lockdown, which has got a teddy bear in it. Each one is colour themed actually. So this one that I've been showing you is the green. So hence the reason a lot of things have been green. The one with the bear in it is yellow, and we have a red one and a blue one. So each one has a different puppet. The idea of the puppet is if the child wants to or the family want to, they can take the puppet on a tour of the museum, or the puppet takes the child round showing them things. Trying to keep it sort of very child-centred where we possibly can.
I think that's a really good idea. And also I've heard of other museums doing similar things where to get over the worry of a child being attached to that toy, they then sell a version of that toy in the shop as well. Did you do that?
We have other toys. We don't have puppets quite like these in the shop, but we do have other soft toys in the shop, and of course we do have Spike, our dinosaur mascot, who we get into everything that we possibly can. So he's always available in the shop, along with other soft toys.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So we had a quick look there at the use of symbols, and that's one of the reasons why I love your backpack so much, because it's the only one I've seen so far that uses the symbols. And for those who are unfamiliar with symbol use, picture exchange or PECs, it's quite common with children with learning disabilities and lots of different conditions, particularly autism. It's used as well, but not specifically just with that. So Pete, if I can come over to you, because I believe you introduced the idea of using symbols into this. If you could just explain quickly how it works with your family, and how does the symbols actually help facilitate the visit in terms of...
Okay, so for JJ, he very much needs a very rigorous, we do, then we do. And it's a way of communicating that. When you put... for JJ, and I should imagine quite a lot of other children in the museum, there is so much to see, so much to hear, that the sensory processing overwhelms the ability to communicate. So for Jack, he will go in the museum and you can have a conversation with him outside the museum about what would you like to go and see. The moment he's inside the museum, all that ability leaves him. So the idea of the PECs is it enables us to sit, and he has a visual. So he's engaged in his visual processing, his visual cortex, which is what is essentially happening in the museum. And it allows him to slow himself down and say, right, actually, yes, I want to go to that one, and I want to go to that one, and I want to go to that one. We then have a predefined board. What it allows Mum and me to do is then also to put in the bits that we need. So we need the loo break, we need the coffee break, and we can put those bits in, and then he can say, well, actually, I think that it'd be better that we went to the loo after we had coffee. So it also allows him to juggle that. So what we tend to do when we've been in the museum and we've used the backpack is we all choose 3 PECs, and then we work out between us where we put them on the board, and then that's what we go with. Now, sometimes we've come and the gallery's been shut or it's been particularly busy, but that's fine, because with the PECs you can move that gallery to another position, which still means we're going, because visually it's still on our board, visually we're still definitely doing that, but it just means it's in a slightly different position. Whereas if you don't have that and you get to a gallery and it's really busy and it's not really suitable to take Jack into, then he will then panic and disengage with anything else we do for the rest of the day, because his plan is broken. So having the ability to move the gallery and say, right, actually, we're not doing it here, we're going to do it here, is still visually representable to him, so it helps with his anxiety. That's why my suggestion for it, because it just helps with anxiety, it helps with planning, and it means that he can very quickly look at something and go, oh, I'm doing that.
So the choice making is really important as well, isn't it? But also the expressive communication. You've given the opportunity to make decisions as a family, haven't you? It's not just here's a backpack and you know, just for the kid. This is a family tool that you're using then to guide your as a family. That's absolutely brilliant. What I really love about this as well is this. I think I'm right in saying, I'll bring Ros back in again now, that this was probably something, Ros, that you may not have thought about before had Pete not actually come to you and suggested it. So could you just, for the benefit for the people watching this, the huge importance in working in collaboration with people with lived experience, and in this case Pete and his son, you know, can you outline how the collaboration actually came about and what it's meant to you know, you as the museum for working with a Sen family like Pete?
Yeah, it's been really, really valuable actually. The partnership between us and Pete really sort of started with Spike, funnily enough, with them coming to visit, and they bought a Spike, and it sort of went from there, sort of on social media, and we saw how much interaction JJ was having with Spike and going around to visit different places. And I had sort of part of my remit is a lot of family and school work, and I know I needed to make you know, better access to our collections, and when I sort of saw all the interaction Pete was having on social media, I contacted him through that actually to say, could we have a chat? Could we talk about how we can do things better, what we can actually do? I've used PEX balls before. I'm an ex-teacher and I used to use them in the classroom, but for whatever reason, it hadn't crossed my mind to link it to the museum. A lot of my previous life I've brought into the museum, but it was when Pete suggested it, and then the discussion of what type of symbols to use. So all the symbols that are on these little cards are actually the symbols that are on our museum map for the galleries. So there was, you know, it was an easy crossover between here's a map with the symbols on, but here are the symbols that you're using as a family. For us as a museum, having the interaction with Pete and with JJ has been so valuable. You know, they're my go-to family now for when I have a query about something. The wording in the information cards in the pack, Pete advised me on the best way to do that. Things like fonts and sizes, all that type of thing, all comes from advice from Pete. So thank you, Pete.
That is so lovely to hear, and yeah, wonderful to use the images already within the museum. There's also practical reasons for that as well in terms of licenses that you need, isn't it? Some of the like the widget PEX signs and symbols and things.
Yeah.
Just coming back to you then, Pete. I mean, this is a wonderful, beautiful collaboration. How has it impacted on you? I know you and JJ and your family are museum, you know, you're signed up museum visitors anyway, aren't you? But for those, you know, families that perhaps don't feel that museums are for them because of the needs of their children and their family group, how important is it to have these kind of resources? What's the impact on a family like yours, do you think?
So let's go back to pre-Spike. We have a pre-Spike era in our house, and we have post-Spike era. One of the things that we've always known about Jack is it's easy to communicate through teddy bears. So he has one very special teddy bear, Fred Bear, who is about yay big. And if Jack's having a really bad day, then it's Fred Bear. I think really you probably need to go and have a lay down because you seem a bit tired and grumpy. And then Fred Bear tells Jack that actually he's really tired, but he's a little bit scared to go to his bedroom by himself. So perhaps Jack will come and keep him company. So we'd already learnt that communication via a third party. In museums, we never really found a way of doing that. What we found with Spike is Spike gave us that access. He opened that door for us. So then all of a sudden it was like, oh, actually Spike wants to go and see what a Roman soldier looks like. Or use classic example would be Sherman and Peabody. I think it is the film where they travel back through time. And it's like, well, actually, this is great. We see it in a cartoon, but what does that look like if we was to go to a museum and look like that? And Jack wouldn't do it because he couldn't associate that what's in the museum and the film are connected. So Spike acted as that interlink. But what we found when we got into museums was he very quickly got overwhelmed. Everything was so exciting, he wanted to take Spike round. So what the backpack enables us to do, and what Roz has done really, really well, is it slows down the museum visit. Using the timer, you can slow down. You've got the fidget toys that he can just play with, and the magnifying glass so he can look closely because he doesn't always see things, especially small detail. Or, you know, particularly if we want to see, so at Maidstone, they've got an amazing collection of medals. And you maybe want to look at them because they're all really interesting. They're all different details on them and everything like that. So you get Spike to look through the magnifying glass. And because Spike's look through the magnifying glass, Jack wants to look through the magnifying glass. Now, we tend to use Spike, not the puppet, but you could use the puppet in very much the same way. So you use it almost as a, it sounds really horrible, but you almost use it as another child. It becomes part of the family and then part of the visit. So that's how we use it. So in terms of Maidstone Museum, our average visit, I would think pre-Spike, pre-backpack, was probably 20 minutes most. At that point, Jack just wanted the cafe, get out, go to the shop, buy something, and go. With the backpack, I think our longest visit is something like 4 hours, and we just really just slow us down that much because we're not worried. If Jack wants to take time out and sit in the corner and just play with a fidget toy, that's fine. Jack has something. He's not fiddling with exhibits. He's not fiddling with cases. He's not doing anything that's likely to damage anything in the museum. And he's quite happy to sit. We're fortunate. Jack is quite happy to sit there and play with a fidget toy. And then that allows me and Mum to do stuff. So there's lots of things in Maidstone Museum that we really enjoy looking at and we want to spend time really engaging with. So it allows us to do that as well. So whereas before museum visits were very much about Jack, it was very much in the door, run round, out the door, which when Maidstone is a great because, you know, they're free, but some places you go to, you're paying £30-40 for a family ticket. And if you're there for 20 minutes, yeah, it's great to support the venue, but you come away as a family after and you're like, do you know what, this is going to work out really expensive to see the whole of this museum or exhibition because we've got to go back 4 or 5 times. So for us, that is really where the backpacks come in. It just slow the whole process down, allow us to engage and allow the family, which is really important, it allows the whole family to engage with the museum and not just mum and dad being tied up with someone that really doesn't want to read what's on the boards. You know, Jack hates reading, so he's not going to read the text on the board. He just wants to run around. He wants to look at the things he wants to look at. And then that's it. It's done. I've done what I want to see. And then I leave.
I think you raised a really important point. So it's obviously the quality of the visit, but that time and also allowing the other people in that group, the family group, to be, you know, I'm my child's an only child as well, but you know, for families that have children who are not disabled, non-SEND, you know, it's enabling the whole family to be able to get something, each person to be able to get something out of that visit. It's massively valuable. Thank you. I think there'll be a lot of people watching this that will be a light bulb moment to have heard that, Pete. That's really important. So just ending quickly, I could talk to you all day, but we only have a few more minutes. I think that the beauty of this project obviously has been the collaboration. Have there any sort of top tips would you suggest? I guess, Roz, if I come to you first, because many museums watching this are going to go, that's great. I want to do exactly what that lady did there with that lovely gentleman there. And, you know, Pete, I know you're a busy guy, so you might be museums miles away from you. So top tips on how they would be able to get in contact. What was the first inroads? I know you met Pete via social media, but if you were to do it again, sort of cold, you didn't know Pete, what do you think you would suggest for people to do, please?
I think it would be a case of, I spend a lot of time in the museum itself, in the building itself. So and I interact with visitors a lot. So I think it would potentially, it would almost be going up to people who I could see you know, having had children maybe with special needs or even without special needs, but also I work up with schools, so I've got contacts through schools that I can go to, and special needs schools around the local area, and also people like yourself, Sam, who I can come to for advice. You know, it's knowing sort of who you have coming into your museum already, and sort of tapping into that resource, because they're people who would know the museum already. You know, Pete had come to the museum before, and then there's a lot that I'd seen that him and JJ had been interacting with the museum. So that was, for me, it was an easy inroad, if you like. But it was a case of, you know, we have a lot of visitors who have special needs. I have special needs schools come to us. So because of my interaction that way, I can sort of, you know, I feel I can talk to the visitors. And if they say no, then that's fine. But there are always people who are willing to sort of have a chat, and you know, I can go back to and on the phone, on Skype, on, you know, face to face when we're allowed to. But it's sort of it's kind of seeing who you have in as well, rather than getting someone who knows nothing about the museum, because this was about us. This wasn't about museums in general. This was about us as Maidstone Museum. I needed, you know, that's where Pete came in, because he'd been to us a lot before. So
that's a really good idea, isn't it? So yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. You know, people was already a signed up sort of museum visitor. And Pete, just quickly, I don't know if you go to different family groups and things like that, but would you concur with what Rosa said about sort of, you're obviously happy to be approached. I know I would be happy to be approached. It's just about you know, breaking down that fear factor, isn't it, for museum staff to approach families and just say, how can I help? Or is there anything you need?
Right, so I have no problem with anyone approaching me. If we go to a museum, we will always tweet that museum. And we will always try and link back to Maidstone Museum, because the picture will always be with Spike somewhere or other. So I've got no problem with that. I'd like to add just something to what Ros was saying. And I think you need to invite people to engage with the museum. Spike has a great tag on it that says, Spike loves history, show us where Spike's been. And I think you need to encourage that. A lot of museums, I understand you can't take photos in them or anything, but you need to find a way that people coming into your museum can engage. Staff are really busy in museums. They have lots to do. They have hectic days. And families are hectic. You know, you paid, you know, family ticket to London, you paid to go to a museum, you've got the McDonald's and everything else. You know, you've put 150, 200 pound aside. Time is precious for that. If that was your working day, you'd want to get every per capita out of that. So it's important that people, once they've left, can contact backwards. So I think that's a really important thing, is opening or presenting a face that is open for a conversation. And that, I mean, in credit, that's what Maidstone Museum did for Jack so well, is they opened that conversation with Spike.
I think that's really good. And also knowing as well that so many families interact with each other on social media as well. It's a good platform for other people to, if you've had a good experience, I'm likely to have a good experience, and it sort of sells itself, doesn't it? You guys have been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for talking to me today about this. And I know that this will be a really useful film for people to watch in the training sessions and on the website that we'll be putting it on. Thanks ever so much. And I can't wait when we can actually visit in person, personally, and have a go with the fidget backpack ourselves. Take care. Thank you.